right. It is a great day to be talking water and wastewater, whether it's your first time tuning in or you listen to us every single day. Thank you for spending your time here with us. This is the Water Online Show, powered by Water Online, the leading online destination for the water wastewater market. I am your host, Travis Kennedy, and joining me as usual is my co-host extraordinaire and the chief editor here at Water Online, Mr. Kevin Westerling. Big show here today, Kevin. You know, I was thinking just last week about just how much data drives the market nowadays. And that led me to think about just how much that's going to increase as the years go on. Without a doubt, there's going to be more data, and our access to it is going to do nothing but increase. So there's just so much data that's available to utilities and solutions providers right now if they just know where to look. It's fast becoming a different world. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to get more of a glimpse of this at WebTech next week. But this different world is in terms of access to data, but not just there, but access to new technologies. And those technologies that can help solve problems specifically around today's water crisis. And it occurred to me over the past few years as we go to some of these events and we talk to a lot of thought leaders within the marketplace that how we access the information on these new technologies is also going to evolve, and it's going to change. And the question that I have is, how do we match the insight that we currently have access to and connect that to the groundbreaking technologies that are out there, and how those could specifically help solve the current status quo of how we manage water globally? It's a big discussion.
I feel like our guest might be able to help us with that.
I'm fully confident that he's going to get us off to a great start. I mean, the question is, in other words, what is the best and easiest way to get that data, whether you're a utility or a solutions provider? Today, as you mentioned, Kevin, we here at Water Online Show think that we have an answer, or at least can get us started down the path of an answer. So joining us here today on the Water Online audio-visual hotline is none other than Paul O'Callaghan from BlueTech Research, which is one of those very much needed and welcomed consulting organizations that exist for the betterment of the industry. And from what I can tell, they are doing just that. So Paul, welcome to the Water Online Show.
Thanks very much, Travis and Kevin. Lovely to be here with you both.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Paul, we noted at the top of the show that we're on the precipice of a new and exciting chapter here in the water wastewater market. I see BlueTech Research as one of those contributing drivers towards that evolution. So can you tell our listeners and let our listeners and viewers know, if they don't already, just who BlueTech Research is and how you are currently serving the market?
Sure, be happy to. So BlueTech Research, we're a research organization, as the name implies. We spend our time, there's about maybe 30 to 40 research scientists, research analysts around the world that are constantly looking, if you can imagine this with a pair of binoculars, okay, it's the best way to think about us, trying to anticipate what's coming down the line. We're trying to help people identify maybe lighthouses of opportunity, but also avoid crashing over the edge of a cliff because of something unexpected or unforeseen. We created a Wordle about a year ago from the team to describe, we were heading to WebTech and we said, what's the mission? And the words that came out for the mission were enlighten, illuminate, spark, catalyze, things like that. And, for me, the simplest way to describe it is we're trying to shine a light on what's actually happening. If you ever lose your car keys or your phone right in the dark and it's impossible to find them anywhere, but then you turn on a light and it's like, oh, there they were, right there.
Been there many times, yeah.
It's to amaze me, actually. And I think, look, our role is among all of the data and the information. And, I think Water Online is one of the contributory factors of the latest thinking evolving in the industry in terms of keeping your finger on the pulse. So we keep a very close eye on that. We then try and translate that for a chief technology officer or a research and development officer or M&A to say, look, how can I future-proof my technology portfolio? Where should I invest R&D? Who's ready for acquisition? Who's ready for investment? Those are the type of questions we help clients answer.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Paul. And a lot of those words you used, like this word might be overused sometimes, but innovation, you hear it all the time. And when you talk about future thinking and all that.
Enlightenment and spark. I liked all those words.
Certainly the water wastewater industry needs innovation, as does any industry. But their reputation is somewhat to be slow to adopt innovation and new technologies and even new thinking sometimes because they stick to the tried and true sometimes. Is that changing though, Paul?
Yeah, well, I think actually you're right about that word innovation. It is used by different people, but it means different things. It's almost like it could be people speaking different languages sometimes. An investor wants a disruptive innovation that will, completely change the market and make them lots of, good returns.
Sure.
Utility is looking for maybe something that will drive down their energy cost, get more out of the footprint that they have, help them meet that new regulation that's coming down the tracks, deal with, a workforce where there's maybe not enough experienced folks to run the plants. So it'll mean different things to different people. And the entrepreneur again. So we think of it as like sustaining innovation, make what you have better. And we're pretty good at that actually in the water sector. And then when we have a crisis, we're also pretty good. Okay. Of this sector can respond. We've seen that with outbreaks of cryptosporidium. We are seeing that with PFAS right now. And we will continue to see it where cities wrestle with extreme weather events, stormwater overflows. So I think we do see it in all those ways. Where we might be slow is the fact that, it takes a while to build these things as well. People often lose sight of that. There's a cycle to building a piece of infrastructure and an asset that factors into that. But I think the accelerators I see are policy, regs, people becoming more aware as well.
Yeah, we're dealing with that right here in the States now after a hurricane slammed into into the east coast of our country. Yeah. So without a doubt, I mean, it all really starts with people understanding and getting involved. And then that can, of course, down the line, lead to policy regulations, things like that.
Yeah, of course. And Paul, you just name checked a bunch of things happening in the industry that might convince people that to, adopt new technologies or new thinking. Are there any like specific mandates that you think are driving utilities towards more implementation of that new technology?
Yeah, we're seeing it all over the world actually. I'll give you a few examples from different places. So if we take India, for example, there's regulations in India that you have to replenish groundwater. And like that is causing industries and corporations to figure out how can you do that? How can you purify the water to the point that you can put it back into the ground? The UK is under pressure for water and they're trying to drive down water use to under 115 liters per person per day, which is pretty low. The Netherlands are encouraging rainwater capture, grey water reuse, and examples that I see in North America and the United States. I think what we're seeing happening in Maine right now is something to watch, where the presence of PFAS and biosolids is leading to a lot of controversy and a lot of focused attention on that issue. The same with microplastics, the same with antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So I personally believe that from what we're seeing, the sludge to land space and energy recovery space is one to watch. And nutrients, of course, as well.
I mean, without a doubt, those are some of the challenges that we're faced with, and it's understandable that different areas of the world handle that in different ways. So it's great to hear that in other regions of the globe that it is a priority, and they're doing what they can within their given geographical region to be able to attack some of those problems. Another way to attack the problems as well deals specifically in the world of innovation. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about some projects that you've been involved in over the past 4 or 5 years that highlight some of those technologies. So feel free to mention those and talk about those as you answer this question. But I'm curious, top of mind, putting you on the spot, what are some of the top of mind examples of innovation that are penetrating the market right now and creating a lot of momentum? So what would you say to that?
Sure. Okay. So one would be granular activated sludge technology. It's a process intensification technology. You can get more out of a smaller footprint. You can potentially drive down energy and also deal with nitrogen issues. That's one. It's moved really quickly. I think while Haskell and DHV were quick off the mark with the Narita technology, but there are a number of others, at least 3 other people now in the space. And that's a good indication that it's moving to the mainstream when you see that. I think ceramic membranes are the same. A number of US companies manufacturing in Texas and elsewhere. Adoption speeding up for ceramics. I think sludge pyrolysis is one of the areas to watch, and hydrothermal carbonization of sludge.
Agree. Yeah.
We've got a few companies coming to WEFTEC that are doing this. So keep an eye out for those at the WEFTEC Innovation Pavilion. And obviously PFAS destruction, electrolytic, electro-oxidation of PFAS. Yeah, I did, of course, as you mentioned, I've been studying this for years, and it culminated with something I'm happy to kind of give a shout out for. I turned on my PhD work into a book, and this is the book, The Dynamics of Water Innovation. I only just got a copy of it last week in my hands, so it's kind of nice. It's still shiny and new for me.
Has a new book
How about
smell.
that?
I love it.
Yeah, indeed.
That's great.
Yeah, it's
Everybody
nice.
go get it.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that. So as far as BlueTech goes, what kind of, you do a lot of research and you provide data and analytics to your customers. So what do you find that they're asking you for? Like what types of data do they need to do their jobs better? If you can, and that might speak to some of the trends of the industry and where it's going.
I think, look, they want to know technical information. They want to know, does it work? How much energy does it consume? Will it meet my specs? So technically they need, very solid assessment. Timing is key. So they need to understand, where is this at in that cycle? Is granular sludge ready for prime time? Is side stream demodification still niche, or is it going mainstream? What are we seeing? So tracking change over time. And I think where we add a lot of value is when there's lack of clarity and things are moving quickly. You put those two things together, that's where a research firm should be focused. So I think helping people understand when they should adopt, what's available, making sure they've got a full 360-degree vantage point view. Maybe they're not aware that, other utilities are doing this over there. And also kind of learning actually from each other as well. So they're keen to learn from industry, learns from industry learns from utilities. So there's a lot of kind of, I would say, radical collaboration is the word that we use for it.
I mean, it is pretty remarkable, right? We talk about how this industry sort of moves at a glacial pace, but what I'm finding and what we're finding here at Water Online is sort of, there's a change to that behavior. Now there's a lot more interest on, all right, so where are we in terms of technology? How quickly can it meet my needs? And there's a sort of this universal curiosity about moving forward from a technological standpoint and being able to offer solutions that help attack some of the issues that utilities are facing. So there's a curiosity that's there that probably wasn't there 5-10 years ago, when a lot of these utilities are like, well, we'll just do the same old, same old.
And it also helps with the risk equation, right, Paul? Like if you see one of your peers doing it, you kind of get an idea of if it works or not. You feel a little less wary about trying the same thing. And then there is the money aspect. That's always a factor.
Yes, always there.
Yeah. And we always like to say we don't know of any overfunded, utilities.
Have you ever met an overfunded utility, Paul?
Maybe one in the Middle East.
Maybe, yeah, that could be it, right?
All right.
We haven't come across them yet,
in every role, right?
at least here in the States.
And we know the extent of the needs that municipalities deal with, and water suppliers and industry. So does that spur the need does that either hold them up with adopting new innovation, or maybe it compels them to do it more because they might have to do more or less? How does the kind of tight money factor into the innovation implementation?
Yeah, it's a really important variable factor, because it's really tricky to raise rates. In the United States, it's such a political issue. It's an option and it's a lever that a lot of utilities just are very uncomfortable with. Like you can see that with rate increase announcements, that if we're to treat PFAS, it will result in a 50% increase in your water bill, and that's a struggle. Some of what we see is driven by a definite need to save money. I'll give you a few examples. Like in New York, the New York DEP were facing densification in Brooklyn. A beautiful old iconic building called the Domino Sugar Factory. If you walk past it, you can't mistake it. It was an old sugar factory. and it was rebuilt from inside, and you're adding like thousands and thousands of new people living there, working there. And the DEP just didn't have the capacity in the sewer system. So they said, hey, look, we'll work with you, building developer, but you got to kind of sort this out yourself. And they worked with a really interesting company called Natural Utility Systems to reuse the water on site right in the heart of Brooklyn. So that's an example where there's a really creative approach taken to being squeezed, you could say, in terms of the assets and not having too many other options, but led to some pretty interesting, and we see that type of thing popping up all over.
I mean, cool. One thing that's really been consistent as it relates specifically to utilities is how they go about making their decisions when adopting either current technologies that they've always used or perhaps considering something new. And part of the evolution of the market that I've noticed, having gone to a number of events, it pops up every year at the Swan Forum. It's talked a lot about at WebTech and at AWWA, and I'm sure that you discussed it, and it was a topic of interest when BlueTech Research had your event earlier on this year. I think it was just about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken. And that is, what does the tip right now in your estimation and how you see it, what does the typical decision-making process look like, specifically around like technology adoption and selection of technologies? Because there's a lot more cross-departmental cooperation, especially within utilities when it comes to making those decisions. So how do utilities tend to discover, understand, and finally get approval for the investment?
Yeah, well, historically, you used to always have what was called the early adopter. And it was this, individual oftentimes within the utility that was leading the charge. And you know the type of people that, there was one in Clean Water Services. This guy was such an innovator that he saw an episode of The Simpsons where they crossed, Homer Simpson was eating a tomato plant with a tobacco plant. And he created the tobacco plant himself, and he ended up on The Simpsons. Now,
I mean, there's no greater compliment, at least here in the States, if one of something you do ends up talked about or appearing on The Simpsons.
Everything ends up on The Simpsons.
Right, everything at some
point. When you're on the air for 30 years.
Pretty impressed with that. I think also what we're seeing is a water utility often sits within a city.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing now that the water utility is engaging more broadly with the city. Again, one example happens to be in New York. They're using a sunken basketball court for stormwater storage.
Okay.
Now you're finding that, they're looking at like
That's a unique idea.
Pretty, isn't it? It's a pretty cool idea. I mean, and it integrates wider, rather than just focusing just on the utility, it takes a viewpoint of the city, of the other assets that are there. This the basketball court can function, a short time as something else. We see some collaborations there. We also see utilities working with their industrial partners.
Right.
There's one in Denver, Colorado, where Microsoft is working with a startup called Fido, and I think it's Epcor Water Services, on leak detection.
Well, leak detection is certainly a hot issue. That's for sure.
Yeah, leaks you talk about an economic issue. If you're losing that much of your water, you got to think that if you were able to do a proper economic analysis on that, and if the challenge was there, how does one, drop that down from 30% to 10% and over 5 years get the payback? It seems like it's almost like a market failing, a lack of innovation that's leading to no one able to tackle that problem.
Without a doubt. I mean, it all comes back to ROI, from that specific standpoint. How are you going and how quickly can you make your money back, especially if you're a utility? Again, probably not an overfunded one. Final question I have for you before we talk about some of the offerings that BlueTech Research has for the marketplace. I want to get back and talk specifically about the book for a couple minutes, and also the films and all of the ways that BlueTech Research is contributing to the market. But looking forward to the future, what are the advancements you're tracking that you believe could have the largest impact?
I think Earth observation science is one that is going to be very useful for utilities, consulting engineers in particular, because it allows us to understand in a totally new way what's going on with water resources. We're already seeing people detecting leaks using satellites, but also monitoring water quality and anticipating. You tie that together with artificial intelligence and modeling software, and now you've got an ability to try and understand what's going to happen and take a corrective action.
So I don't want to get off air without talking about BlueTech Research specifically. There's just so much that BlueTech Research does for the marketplace, and it's all for the betterment and advancement of the industry and making sure that everybody everywhere has access to water. And part of that is being able to give all the information you can around how they can get access to water, which has been our water crisis.
Yeah, well, look, we're really happy that we're launching this new book, The Dynamics of Water Innovation. The idea is to take what we all, I think, maybe experience day to day and live and can relate to, but to put it into a kind of a manual type format where those lessons are now codified and can be referenced, be it that by a young professional or someone who's been in the industry for years, but wants to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And it's really it's put out there as a challenge. It's just hot off the press. So again, I'm just happy to hold it in my hands finally. But we established some timelines, I think, and we also said, well, here's what can speed up those timelines. And then we looked at different types of innovation drivers and just dove into that word innovation. What does it mean to different people? So it's available and people can purchase it online or indeed come and meet us at WEFTech, and we'll be happy to maybe even sign a copy for you.
How would they find it online? Like would they go to your BlueTech Research site, or where else can they get it?
Go to braveblue.world.
Perfect. Okay. Braveblue.world, everybody, to purchase the book. What about Brave Blue World? What else can you tell us about something that has that name and something similar?
Yeah, well, look, in 2018, we established the Brave Blue World Foundation, and the idea was for storytelling purposes in water that we could do a better job. And that led to the first film project, which, is now on Netflix and accessible to over 200 million people. Millions of people have seen it. We get letters coming back from school kids actually all the time and what they've learned. And we think that's fantastic because that's where you need to start, right?
I'm one of those millions, and it is a phenomenal film. Anybody and everybody that's listening needs to take an hour and a half, 2 hours out of their day over the course of however many days, because it's Netflix, and check it out. It is informative, entertaining, and exactly what you said, Paul. Everybody likes a good story. We need to tell these stories, and that the film does a great job of that.
Thanks. Yeah. And that the follow-on film, Our Blue World, is now doing film festivals. It's in Newport Beach Film Festival, October 21st. It'll be shown in Washington, D.C., Hawaii, Brussels by the European Union. So it's doing this tour really at the moment where we're showing it all over the world, but also doing a grassroots movement. So if people wish to show it in their local theater, church, school, whatever the case may be, again, if you contact us via braveblue.world, we'll make it very, very easy for folks to bring people together. Because I do think when you come together and you watch something, you think, you were there at the premiere in New York, Travis, and there's an energy and there's a buzz that happens when people experience it together. And we're trying to drive as much of that as possible.
An absolute groundswell of energy. I mean, there was just so much excitement, so much energy. Everybody was on the same page about the importance of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here to help solve the water crisis.
And it's so cool that the water industry is so integrally involved with that industry. It feels like entertainment, like movies. Like who would have thought that we'd be going to movie premieres?
I mean, it's a big deal.
But
yeah,
it's a big deal.
I mean, I had a tux and there was a blue carpet, and it was a big deal. And there was a lot of people there and a lot of important and influential people there.
It's another example of telling your story in a unique way.
Without a doubt. Yep. And BlueTech Research does a great job with it. And Paul, I want to thank you on behalf of the market and the industry for all BlueTech Research does for the water crisis, the world, and for our market specifically. Thank you very much for everything. And thank you for spending your time here with us today. We know you're a busy guy. We know you're traveling all over the world.
Better.
Yeah, exactly. But we appreciate you spending some time here with us. And we cannot wait to have you back on the show. Much appreciated. And can't wait to see you next week at WebTech in New Orleans. Paul O'Callaghan, BlueTech Research, thank you very much for being on the Water Online Show.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Trevor. Travis, thanks, Kevin.
And for all of you listening out there, thank you for spending your time here with us. We appreciate every minute that you give us here. We try to bring you the most up-to-date and influential information facing the water wastewater market here on the Water Online Show, brought to you by wateronline.com. For all of us here, for Kevin, myself, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.